Good morning and welcome to Live from Currituck Extension. I'm Olivia Patchell and I am the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent for Currituck and Camden counties. And as the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent, I provide research-based information to the community in the areas of health and nutrition. And today on our episode of Live from Currituck Extension, we are going to be making a Kachumber salad. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind you to make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Ring the bell if you'd like notifications about when we go live or when we post any content. And if you like our content, don't forget to hit that like button. If you check out the description, you'll notice that there are several links in there. Those are the recipes for today's class, our social media links, as well as a link to an evaluation. If you take a few minutes to fill out that evaluation and let us know if there is something that you would like to see and how we're doing so that we can make content that you guys want to watch. So we'll go ahead and get started with our recipe today. We are making a Kachumber salad, and this is actually a recipe that is from a larger curriculum developed by North Carolina State University called the Med Instead of Meds curriculum, and it gears you to eating a Mediterranean style. And that doesn't mean that we're going on a Mediterranean diet. It just means that we're making some switches in our diet or flips in our diet so that we can make a little healthier choices. The Mediterranean style of eating is just a different way of eating than the traditional American diet, and it is a great way to get your foot in the door, to adding more fruits and vegetables to your diet, picking healthy fats, and also getting new recipes. So I feel like I was kind of stuck with my recipes for a little while, and then this Mediterranean style of eating became really popular, and it has really helped me broaden my horizons in my recipes. And before I go any further, I did forget to mention, if you have anything that you would like to chat with me about, you can do that in the chat box. If you are on YouTube, if you are on Facebook, you can make some comments in the comment section, and hopefully I can get to them. And let's go ahead and get started. This recipe is delicious. I promise you guys, I make it several times, and everybody I know loves it. So the very first thing about our Kachumber salad is it makes 8 servings, or the recipe that we're doing today makes 8 servings. The whole thing takes about 20 minutes, depending on how fast you cut. And then there is no cook time. There is some chill time. So I usually chill mine for about an hour, and then just remembering that the longer it sits, the hotter this recipe tends to get. It has a kick to it because we do add jalapenos and cayenne pepper. So if you do not want it to have that spice, you can take out or add to. The really cool thing about this recipe is very versatile to your taste, but it opens you up to a couple of different tropical fruits that maybe you weren't using before. So, what are our ingredients? So we need to gather our ingredients. If you've ever heard of this French term, it's called mise en place. And what that means is that you need to gather all your ingredients together before you get started. It just makes the cooking process so much easier. Our ingredients for today's recipe are going to be tomatoes, cucumbers. You can use an English cucumber. I know things are kind of hard to find right now, so a regular cucumber will do the same. It's just going to have more seeds in it than an English one. And then you've got a jalapeno, and I love the jalapeno in the recipe, but a lot of people do take that out. It's optional. Mango, the pineapple, and let's see. And then we have chopped mint leaves from the garden, which is delicious. And for our spices, we're going to use cumin, salt, cayenne, and we're going to use 1 lime, or the juice of 1 lime. And another optional, but is a great addition to this recipe, is the Spanish peanuts. Spanish peanuts are sometimes hard to find. I typically have a hard time finding them at the grocery store. And so I'm using regular peanuts today, but if you have any allergies, remember it's optional. You can add something else. It's something with a little crunch is nice, but you do have the cucumbers. So that gives it a crunch as well. Then you'll need to gather your equipment. So for equipment, we're going to use a sharp knife. We're going to need a cutting board, a bowl to mix everything in, a spoon to stir, and then any measuring spoons and cups that you might need. I've already pre-measured out all of our ingredients and cut all of our ingredients to make today go a little smoother. Before we get started with the actual preparation of this recipe, I wanted to go over these rules for knife safety. And it's really easy to remember the rules for knife safety because we're going to spell out the word safety. The first thing is S. So you want to securely hold your knife. And a lot of people hold their knives, and this is how you hold your knife when you're cutting food at your plate, but they hold their knife with the index finger on the top or the spine of the knife. So this is not a great way to hold a knife. What I would rather see is the last 3 fingers wrap around the blade, and then your index finger and thumb are used to pinch the blade or the handle, depending on your style. And I recommend that you just practice with it. We have this bad habit of putting our index finger here because that's kind of how we saw through our steak and those things that are on our plate. But you need to take that index finger and wrap it on around your knife. So I typically hold mine, pinching the blade, and then taking my last 3 fingers and putting them under the heel of the knife. So I hope you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. This is a practiced thing. I definitely used to do this a lot. And you'll see that you have a lot more control when you actually hold the knife with your index finger. I call this your controlling finger. And if you hold it with your controlling finger, then you'll get a lot more control of the knife. And I love to use a chef's knife because it does have this kind of curve to it, and as opposed to some other knives who are flat. And that allows you to just kind of keep the tip of the blade on the cutting board. And I'll demonstrate that after we go through our safety rules. So there is your S, hold the knife securely. A is for anchor your cutting board. So cutting boards, a lot of them have these convenient silicone feet. If they do not have these convenient silicone feet, you can take a wet paper towel or a wet cloth of some kind and put it under your cutting board, and that will secure it to the table. If it's not secure to the table, and today we're cutting a lot of juicy things, you could end up chasing around your cutting board, and that's definitely not something that we want to do. And then F is for curling back your fingertips. So when you're holding something with your hand that's not holding your knife, whichever hand that is, you want to curl your fingers. So bending at the first knuckle and tuck those fingertips underneath. This is also another learned skill. It takes a lot of practice to go from just holding stuff like we normally would, with our fingertips pointing out, then to have them curled under. We call this a bear claw when we're talking to youth. And I just want you to kind of see that that nice curl. So what that does is makes a flat surface, and you're much less likely to cut off a fingernail or the tip of the finger. Oops, I went the wrong way. All right, E is eyes on the knife. And this is super important. I know a lot of times, especially like myself as a busy mom, we are not solely focused on cooking. We are always doing more than one thing. And that's what makes us successful, right? But whenever you're cutting with your knife, you really need to make sure that you're paying attention to where that knife is coming down. So it's perfectly acceptable to look up while your knife is up in the air, but anytime you push down that knife, you need to know where that knife is going. So you need to keep your eyes on that knife. And a lot of people will mindlessly talk with their knife like this. Your eyes are not on your knife when you're doing this, because otherwise you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm a serial killer. Put it down, and then you can talk with your hands. So I typically keep the knife on the table when I'm not cutting because I love to use my hands to talk, and I would be waving that knife around at you guys right now. So T, we've made it to T in the word safety, and this one is really important as well. You know, we all want to be those next top chefs, and we want to cut really fast, and we want to see how fast we can mince and how, awesome it is to, just go around. Take your time, work your way up to the speed. You want to make sure that you're safe above everything else. So keep that in mind as you're cutting. Just take your time. And then yield to falling knives. This one, I love this one because I have this great way to yield to falling knives. So if a knife falls, you're supposed to throw your hands up and jump back because you want to make sure that you do not try to catch the knife, and that's just a reaction, and that your feet are out of the way. And you really want to make sure when you're cutting or working in the kitchen that you have on closed-toed shoes, especially if you're using a sharp knife. I know that's not always possible at home, so that whole jump back really does help protect the feet. You want to get back, and that was just a little jump. I would jump way, way back if a knife was falling, and I throw my hands up because I would instinctively try to catch it. And that is just our nature. It's our reaction to try to catch something that's falling. And the knife is not something that we're going to want to catch. So the different types of cuts, and I'm just going to go over the cuts that are in the recipe that we're using today. We have a mince, a dice, and a chop, and I list them here in order of size. Mince is going to be your smallest, and we have minced the jalapenos. I don't know if you guys can see those. They're really small, and this helps incorporate them into the recipe. So you would also mince something like garlic. A lot of times you do to mince your mint leaves, or I think in this recipe we chopped them, but you can mince your herbs as well. And then for diced, that's going to be a little bit bigger than minced, but not quite as big as chopped, and a little more uniform in size. So those are reserved for your harder fruits and vegetables. And then chopped is a little rougher, a little bit larger. So that's going to be your biggest cut. Now, with this recipe or any recipe, as long as there's no specified size, it can be what you want it to be. It's to your taste. It's what you're going to eat. So just keep that in mind. Make it the size that works for you. All right, so let's put this recipe all together. But before I do that, I want to show you how I cut everything, because I think it's important just to kind of see some knife skills in action. I know I'm a little far away from you, so you can get really close to the screen if you need to, but I'm going to go ahead and hold my knife in my special grip with my pinch, and I'm going to take my curled fingers and I'm going to hold my cucumber. I'm doing something different with this cucumber. We're going to pickle it and use it on a different recipe later in the day. So this is double duty. I did not peel the cucumbers in this recipe, and I just wanted to mention that since this one is peeled. The tip of the knife needs to go down towards the cutting board, and you're going to want to cut with this back section of the knife, closer to the heel than the tip when we're cutting a piece of produce. Anything that's round, you do want to make sure that you have a flat edge so that you're not chasing it around. Cucumbers, if you're not peeling them, you can make that flat edge or not. That a lot of times you can roll them around till you find the flat side, but you don't want the cucumber to be rolling around as you're trying to cut it. Point down. We try to keep the tip of the knife on the cutting board, and then we press down into our produce, push forward, put the tip back down and pull back, press down, push forward, put the tip down, pull back, press down, push forward, tip down, pull back. So that's kind of the method that you'll work on. You'll notice you probably didn't hear much of this because I don't really like that sound. That means that you've picked up the knife really high and you're putting a lot of pressure on it to push it down. If you use the back portion of the knife, if you have a nice sharp knife, you should not have to put too much pressure on it unless you're cutting something hard like a potato or maybe a spaghetti squash or something like that. So keep that in mind. Try the next time you cut, try these techniques. Hold it like I had mentioned with the pinch grip. Use your claw on the other hand, and then really try to be really slow, methodical, and quiet when you cut. All right, let's put this recipe together. I'm just going to move this out of the way. And we're going to bring in our mixing bowl and our spoons to mix with. This recipe is super easy. We're dumping everything in. Got our cucumbers, and I ate the cucumbers. So it's cut in quarters, and then the quarters are cut again for an eighth. Math. And this pineapple, so I bought a pineapple and it is not ripe. So I actually am using canned pineapple. Right now, ingredients are really hard to come by, especially produce that's good. So canned produce is good as well. Just make sure you get the produce that's canned in its own juices or water. And when we're talking fruit, and then with vegetables, you want to make sure that you're looking at low sodium options. I have a mango here. It is not as ripe as I would have liked it to be, but there was only one mango, so we're going to give it a try. Mangoes are usually pretty slippery to cut. This one's still really firm because it's not very ripe. But you just need to be careful and remember to find that flat side. When I cut a mango, what I like to do is cut the end deep enough to where I can see where the seed is. The seed in a mango is flat, and it runs long ways or this way, depending on how you cut it. And then when you find the seed, you'll know how to cut around it. And this mango is peeled as well. We have our tomatoes that we chopped. Starting to smell delicious. And then our jalapeno. Remember, you can add this or use the amount that you want. This is a whole jalapeno. I'm only going to put half of this whole jalapeno in. And then we're going to add in our mint. We have cut that up nice, straight from the garden. This is a cumin and cayenne. And then the last thing we're going to add here is our lime juice. And I am going to grind in a little salt. And that's to your taste there, whatever you feel is appropriate. And then it's just a matter of mixing it up. And it already looks delicious. You can see the color is great. And we made ours a little chunkier. You can make it a little smaller. Sometimes I think I've even made this one with the little slap choppers or the onion choppers so that the pieces are nice and small. And it just depends on what you want to use it for. So this is a pretty versatile recipe. Now I tend to eat this by itself. But you can also eat it on a slice of bread, a pita, a naan, or even as a topping like a salsa. So this right here is to be chilled in the refrigerator. Then when you're ready to serve it, you can add your peanuts or your Spanish peanuts, whichever you can find. And so I just want to quickly touch on what about this kind of is great for the Mediterranean diet, and that is the topic of snacking on nuts and seeds or adding nuts and seeds to our diet. And I did mention that this is part of the Mediterranean style of eating, which is a curriculum that a North Carolina State University developed, the Med Instead of Meds curriculum. So I would love for you guys to go check it out. The links are in the description to the website as well as what I'm talking about today. So some med flips to adding nuts and seeds to your diet would be a lot of us, myself included, are on the go and we'd have these protein bars or these cereal bars in the morning. You'd actually switch that out for a handful of almonds. And then if you need the crunch, I love to have a little crunch. The chips or crackers are a great way to have some crunch or to switch the chips and crackers for nuts and seeds for that crunch. You've got almonds or sunflower seeds in our house. We also like the pumpkin seeds. So those are some things that you could kind of snack on. All right. Oops, we went the wrong way. And then the med tips. So nuts and seeds are a great addition to salad, which is what we did today with our Kachumber salad. We added our nuts. I love to add nuts to like a strawberry spinach quinoa salad, and that's linked in the description. And you can also add nuts to your grains, maybe a quinoa or a couscous, and there's a link in the description for a recipe like that. I do see that we have some questions about the salt block. That you've never seen one like this. This is, I call it my complicated salt, and it is a pink Himalayan rock that salt rock that you grind, and you can get it from TJ Maxx if you want them. Also, I think they have them online too. It's pretty neat, and it's just something different. So there's a little fun trick for you, and it impresses people when you come out and you grind salt off. The same way with a salt grinder, it's a larger chunk that you're grinding. So I got mine from TJ Maxx. All right. So the very last thing I wanted to remind you guys, and I have talked about this, but this curriculum is part of the, this recipe is part of a larger curriculum from Med Instead of Meds. And the recipe is, or the link is in the description, and I'm showing it to you guys right now. It's the one on the top. And then underneath that, there is a video that talks about how you can add nuts and seeds to your diet a little bit more extensively than I just kind of breezed over it. Before we go, I just wanted to remind you guys to like us on social media. All of our links are in the description. Ring the bell so you get notifications when we go live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. And if you like this video, go ahead and give us that thumbs up. Don't forget the evaluation is in the descriptions, as well as tons of my favorite Med Instead of Meds recipes. I went ahead and dumped a bunch in there. I think you'll love them. And then tomorrow, join Stephanie Minton, our 4-H program assistant, for science experiments from the kitchen cabinet. And that'll be at 11:30, same time, same place. And you're not going to want to miss it. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And thanks for joining.